Hi everyone, this is John with Paralect, and I'm here with the co-founder of Agora, Alex Washburne. And Agora is part of the Paralect Accelerator Batch 2, which is going on right now. He and his team have been working together with our team at Paralect to discover the first version of Agora and start designing and building their startup, which will launch later this year in October, so hopefully. So, Alex, how are you doing today?
It's good to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about Agora. The homepage itself is pretty sparse at the moment. You're not giving away too much. So what is the vision for the platform?
Yeah, big picture, we're seeing Agora as a scientific medium, and we're trying to bring people into that concept by calling it a social medium for science, but it's really so much more. Usually when we think of social media, we think of Facebook, Twitter, maybe even LinkedIn. It's really just about sharing posts and liking and stuff like that. But we're thinking more broadly about the social functions of science and all the things that scientists do and trying to bring them into one place. And so we're really trying to enhance these functions of scientists to chat, share thoughts and questions, to mentor each other, to share papers, jobs, and stuff like that. And down the road, to secure funding, to publish. And so, yeah, we're really looking at the whole life of a scientist and finding that if we bring many of these functions together into one platform, they can synergize off each other, and we can use those synergies in order to make it something more.
Sounds amazing. And I feel like this is a good time and place for something like that, given the sort of broken scientific discourse on traditional social media channels. You're a scientist, as far as I understand. So was there a certain point in time where you said, look, we have to build something better? This is totally broken?
Yes. My journey into this started even before COVID, when I was a postdoc at Duke University, and I had a wonderful advisor. She was incredible, but she was battling cancer, and she passed away just 3 months into my postdoc. And she had managed to set aside her startup fund so I could keep doing research, but I didn't have an advisor. And I started to realize that when you don't have an advisor in science, when you don't have a single person who's famous who can go from university to university sharing your work, it becomes really hard to get your work known, even if it's a good contribution to the field. So I had some people say, "Oh, you should join Twitter." I wasn't on Twitter. Had deleted my Facebook. I don't really like that stuff, just because the vitriol and the way it sucks you in. And so I joined Twitter, and I think my first viral tweet was that I hate Twitter or something like that. And so it just wasn't, it wasn't the place for me as a mathematician to, you know, find my papers and my people and to have this calm discussion that really enriches my life and helps me become a better scientist. Yet that's the place that we point scientists to. And, that was where it started. And I realized we need something so much better. We can totally do better if we deliberately design it. But then, of course, like fast forward a few years, did some epidemiology research. I got really into COVID, and I was doing forecasting, and published some very legit papers in that world of everything from counting people going to the doctor with influenza-like illness in March 2020 to quantifying the increased transmissibility of alpha B117, the first variant of concern in the UK, with the UK epidemiologists. And in that process, I saw this problem, these inefficiencies in science just get blown into, the most extremes. And this is the world facing a crisis, and scientists had to find the answers. And yet we needed to have simultaneously a place for scientists to talk amongst each other with uncertainties, with preliminary figures, with all these things that we're not quite sure about yet. And we also need to be able to consult the public through a crisis. And that doesn't mean we tell them what to do, but we can at least say, hey, we know this, we don't know this. Here's a range of opinions, of possibilities and stuff like that. We just didn't really have a very good platform for informed deliberation, both within the scientific community and for scientists to chime in a respectful way to consult policymakers and the public on big questions du jour. And we're seeing the same thing now with monkeypox. I'm still kind of on the side involved in forecasting monkeypox outbreaks and analyzing that stuff, but we're just having a very difficult time getting scientists to connect with each other. It's usually done via emails, and email inboxes have like 1,000 unreads, and we don't have this really efficient platform for sharing the latest science and talking amongst each other, or contributing collectively towards like a real product that we give to the public.
All right, so definitely the need is there. I guess my next question would be, are there any platforms that sort of inspire you guys as you're building this one, where you look at it and say, we need to build this, but for scientists or something like that?
Yeah, I think there's two platforms and then one piece of technology. The two platforms are Twitter and LinkedIn. I use both. I love them, and I think they have a place in the world, in the market for sharing stuff. Twitter I really like because there's just so much interesting stuff. People will share the lowest, the smallest unit of thought on Twitter. And that's important for science too, for people to be able to, when we have a good idea or a crazy idea, sometimes it starts off with this tiny little catalyst of just, hey, some weird question or some weird observation, and then that spirals into something more. And I really love how Twitter does that. I also love how Twitter allows this direct engagement between scientists and the public. But it's kind of a war zone, and it's full of all kinds of, bots and trolls and pugilists and, malign interests of one sort or another. And it kind of changes the game of science away from the scientific method and towards more populist methods. And so that's really not the best thing about doing science on Twitter. And it also kind of gets scientists at each other's throats. So we don't want a war zone. We don't want to throw gentle young scientists into a mosh pit. And so we want to have their space, their little garden of thought to sit and think and do good stuff. LinkedIn I like because LinkedIn is very professional, right? You don't go onto LinkedIn and start fights. People don't go onto LinkedIn and just start like ripping at each other and retweeting the most outrageous thing and getting angry, right? You go to LinkedIn and it's like, oh wow, someone has succeeded in their career, fantastic. Let's celebrate that. Let's show support for this. I love this. But LinkedIn, no offense, this is just kind of part of a workplace environment, is it's kind of boring, and it's also not specifically designed for scientists. It's great for people with MBAs and people looking to network and advance in their careers, but science is a little bit different than most other careers. It has, this information sharing component that has key units of information that are being shared that we really have to think more specifically about. And so this leads me to the tech that really motivates us is the iPhone, which is that, the idea that we had phones, we had cameras, we had computers, but when you put them together into one, it's something so much more. The synergy of having a phone with a computer allows you to take pictures and put them onto an app on the internet. It allows you to text people pictures and stuff like that. We have maps. We can text people locations with a computer and a phone. And so, that's really what we're thinking about, is that when we look at these social functions of science, for instance, peer review publications and sharing papers, when you put two of those together in a platform, it becomes something more. We can take peer review, for instance, which currently, as a scientist, you get a paper that's not yet published, you look at it, you read it, you share your thoughts about it. That's peer review. But to do it formally, there's, it's time consuming and there's no reward for it. Right now, you share your paper, you peer review a paper, and that's it. There's no, no payment for your time, no, advancement of your career necessarily. And some people are trying to like build rewards and stuff like that. What we're going to be doing at Agora, for example, is we can give you tokens that'll help you boost your paper. So your own work can be, shared more widely if you peer review. And that's how when you bring these two things together to one platform, these synergies enable us to make it something more. And that's just, again, two tiny aspects of science. The life of a scientist is super complicated. They have peer review, they apply for funding, they mentor people, they share their papers, they share their jobs, etc. When you put all those into one place, it becomes this incredible, opportunity for us to make science more efficient and really bring it into the 21st century.
Well, the vision sounds fantastic, and I'm really excited that we are working with you guys on this. So, but you're not a solo founder. Tell us a little bit more about the founding team and what brought you guys together around this vision.
Yeah, so Andrew and Anthony, Andrew Schwartz and Anthony Cortez are the other co-founders, and they'd known each other for a few years. They come from a very different angle. They were, more on the business side and really looking for trusted sources of information. They were the public in a pandemic looking for what can we trust? What's out there? What do we know? And, what's the unknowns? And and they couldn't find it, and they found all these people on Twitter that were making great points, but no one was retweeting them because they didn't have many followers. They're like, why can't we have this informed discussion about COVID-19 epidemiology and policy and the economic costs of interventions and all that stuff that we really should be deliberating? Andrew and Anthony got very motivated by that. And, they started this little Agora account, and this informed discourse LLC is a concept for their motivations of having more informed discourse. And incidentally, I found them, and I was their first follower on Twitter, and we linked up, and I shared this vision that I've brewed since my time at Duke University, and they shared their desire for this informed discourse. And we realized, again, putting us together, we can make it something more. It's not just about the scientists talking to each other, but scientists engaging with the public. And, so that's what brought us all together. And now we're just kind of really riffing and, kind of building. Everybody has their strengths they bring to the table in this. And so it's a really great co-founding team.
Super. That sounds great. I'm curious about how you found out about the Paralect Accelerator. Did one of you guys find it and share it with the rest, or how did you stumble upon us, and what was your first impression of it?
So Anthony heard about Paralect from his friend, who gave glowing recommendations. I forget exactly what the friend or the recommendations, but the instant I heard it, we were like, oh yeah, absolutely. And so we applied, and we're so glad that we did. I think that we were kind of in this tough bootstrap situation of we want to make this huge platform, right? Doing something for all of science is just huge. It's too big for us to do. And I've got some coding chops, but not the right kind. And we didn't have the funding to make the platform. We didn't have the platform to get the funding. And so in that kind of chicken or egg or bootstraps problem, we saw Paralect and the opportunity to work with your engineers to make a minimum viable product. And that was exactly what we needed. That really helped us launch into this, step into the space with something real.
Yeah, that's great to hear as well. Did you guys try any other accelerators or startup incubator programs before?
I haven't. And I've tried to do some entrepreneurial stuff of one kind or another, but no proper accelerator or incubators. And I'm not sure about Andrew and Anthony.
Okay. So you mentioned that you were sort of bumbling along trying to bootstrap this before you realized that you needed some engineering help, at least at a minimum. So were there any other major challenges that you were facing aside from we need to build it and we need the money to build it?
I think the biggest challenge we're facing is strategizing, what comes when. As we're building this plane as we take off, I think the first thing we needed was engines and wheels, right? And then slowly we can start thinking, oh shoot, we really need wings because the runway's coming. We got a runway coming up. And then, oh shoot, now we're getting high, we're going to need a shell. And so really figuring out what comes when has been the biggest challenge, because we have this huge vision. I think we can do incredible things and revolutionize science for the 21st century, but that's step 100. And so the real challenge is like, okay, which exact steps are steps 1 through 10? And which are, those will get us to, a place where we can start thinking more concretely about 10 through 50 and 50 through 100. I think that, really specifically, the things that we're challenging, we were wondering which features should we prioritize to set us aside from others in the market, while simultaneously helping us show users what our vision is and what we're building towards.
All right, so let's dig into that first 10 steps a little bit, because you guys have been going through the sort of the discovery phase for the last 4 or 5 weeks already, maybe longer. So how did the team and you work together to narrow down that vision into the first 3, 4, 10 steps?
I mean, we couldn't have done this without Paralect. So what really helped us was talking with people who had experience doing this before, and specifically doing this with tech companies before. They were able to lay down a roadmap, walk us through a process of, okay, what are all the things you want your users to do? What are the, all the things you want, the features, the bells and whistles that you want on your platform? And they were also simultaneously interviewing our potential users. And so they were really getting their own instinctive sense of what users want. And that gave us all this, better collective understanding of like what users want, what features we have that can connect those dots. And then at the same time, we're working in the marketing side of things. Like, what are we going to tell people? What's our pitch? What are we? And does our platform and our features that we have in the minimum viable product match up to what we're promising or what we're advertising to people? So I think the discovery phase with Paralect, one, like the people are just so much fun to work with that we're so excited. Every call we're hopping on, we're like, oh my gosh, how are you? We're trying to learn some new languages and say hi and goodbye in different languages, which is fun. But also just they're professional, cheerful, super talented. And I think, getting to work with them, I mean, it's every little thing. They interviewed the users, and so they could talk about what so and so said and what they wanted. So that kind of catalyzed our discussion about which features we want. And then they had incredible designs of all the features. So when we look at those, then we're like, oh, we absolutely need that. Like that's so cool. We want that. And then okay, yeah, this isn't this this we can see how this functionality can be done somewhere else for the time being. Blah blah blah. So really, just like we had this this activation energy to get us to another level where we can kind of catalyze our own business and get some momentum ourselves. But with Paralect, it just got us over that and beyond. I mean, it's just so cool to see where we are now and where we're headed.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'm curious, now that you've sort of narrowed down that scope of the features for the MVP, what are those key features that will appeal to you? And I'm sure you've discussed it with other scientists like yourself. What are you sort of bouncing off people saying, look, we're building this and it's going to have X and you're going to love it? So can you tease us with a few of those key features?
Absolutely, yeah. So, it was hard because we had this huge vision, and, when we had to whittle it down to something smaller, it felt like we were chopping arms and limbs off the baby. And so we kept the legs so it can run. And, we'll be attaching other things down the road. There's good prosthetic options for fingers, so et cetera, et cetera. So I think what we whittled down, our minimum viable product is going to be focused on showing people what we can do with the social medium for science. So it's going to be a thread and a feed that feels kind of like Twitter and LinkedIn, but with some features that we're really designing for scientists, that we know that scientists have such a difficult time finding out, like, where do they put a job posting? When you have a job posting, for example, you're going to be like, oh, hey, I got a big grant. I want to hire a postdoc or a PhD student. Typically, people send that via emails to other people they know in the field, and maybe they know someone who might be a good fit, or they'll share it on Twitter. But if you don't have a lot of followers, it doesn't get found. Or you can share it on, every different field has its own weird job posting. There's mathjobs.org. There's Ecolog for ecologists. There's expert archives at PeerJ, if you know about PeerJ, which is just one journal of thousands. And so, the system is kind of fragmented, and atomized in a way that makes it difficult to have these massive reaches for a job search, as just one example. And a paper is another example of, you publish a paper and then you're like, oh, great. But not everyone read the journal on that month, and so how are they going to find my paper? It might be really relevant. It might change their mind and their whole career trajectory to just read this paper and build off of it, or have some idea from it that they go take somewhere else entirely. And that's those sort of inefficiencies in helping scientific products and opportunities finding their audience that we're trying to show people we can catalyze better if we design a platform for scientists. So we can have all kinds of features like, very specific academic tags and identifiers that help people identify each other and share this job with someone, directly in their feed. So they can see, oh, wow, great, I like that. I would love to work at Duke University studying this. I would love to, this is a great opportunity. So we're really focusing on that. We're also focusing on this editorial function, really thinking about the science and public interface. It's important to do science, let's put it this way. So scientists, they need a place to work together. That's why we have universities, right? Scientists are not, just doing their work in Walmart or, the coffee shop. I mean, some of them are at the coffee shop, but we have a university as a place to bring people together. And they can have different conversations with each other that really push the envelope in our understanding of the world. We also have to engage the public, because science is not, it's not this kind of isolated cult, right? This is essential for society, for civilization, for us to put people on the moon and build alternative energy resources and respond to a pandemic and tackle climate change, etc. this is science and society. And so we're thinking about that interface too by providing an editorial dashboard so scientists can publish popular science pieces to say like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm an ecologist in the Amazon and I've, found this crazy species of frog, and share that and maybe someone will know. And again, then the public can find that content and know that it's from an accredited source of information. And we'll hopefully be able to show the public a little bit more of the sausage factory of science, which is that people are unsure, we debate, we discuss, but we kind of have rules of engagement. We avoid ad hominem attacks. We really try to focus on methods and, the connections between the evidence and the conclusions. And hopefully in this process of bringing scientists together with an efficient medium to share their stuff with each other and providing this public-facing dashboard for editorials and pop science pieces, we'll be able to kind of point people towards the vision of Agora. That this is a modern-day 21st century academic institution of sorts. This is like the university that brings people together. And that's not saying don't go be an activist or get involved or whatever, saying that the university is a place for higher learning and thought. And, you can launch off and go do whatever you want. You can still be on Twitter. You can still be on LinkedIn. You can still do all that stuff. But at least you'll have a place that's really designed for you.
Yeah, my next question was going to be whether this would be sort of a place where lay people could just come and read articles that interest them, or whether it would just be for scientists to read other scientists and do peer-reviewed work. So how are you guys thinking about that right now? And is there one community that you sort of need to, or think you need to engage first in order to get it started?
Yes. So the public is going to be an essential component of this. We want the public to have a place where they can get the best information. And we think that, currently scientists are just mixed in Twitter, right? And so, maybe, this really brilliant scientist has 20 followers and just, they're a tree fallen in the forest over there, but that brilliant scientist in the scientific community is widely respected, and in the scientific community, their contributions would be upvoted more, right? And so we just want to be careful about allowing sort of the, lay upvoting of science, right? Science is not a popularity contest. It's about, which things really help us kind of understand and, predict phenomena in nature. So we want the public to be able to read it and to see it. And we're actually going to have down the road, in addition to this popular science, allow the public to like get fascinated and like fall in love with all these scientists and all the cool things they're doing and have one space. So instead of like, oh, here's 1,000 scientists scattered across Medium and Substack with all kinds of weird handle names that have, don't really kind of help us know that there are scientists in this space, that's kind of hard to find. But if we bring everyone together into one place, the public can go and you can hear super cool things. The public loves like going to lectures where you can learn about some new astrophysics or something like that. And so by having a pop science dashboard that the public can read, we're hoping people can really get in on that, and have that experience of, the awe and wonder of science, and also be able to see inside the sausage factory a little bit like, oh, hey, scientists are disagreeing and debating, but being respectful because we're part of this community, because we have to live with each other every day. We can't just be at each other's throats the way people on Twitter might be able to be. We really have to have a way of keeping things civil while, having disagreements that we care a lot about. Like if this is your theory, but it might be wrong and someone else is trying to prove it wrong, it can very quickly feel personal. Even in science, there's a long history of these sorts of struggles. The Pythagoreans from ancient Greece were following Pythagoras, who showed the relationship between sides of a right triangle. And then they built off that to think everything in the world must be a rational number. Every number is a ratio of two integers. And then this young scientist, Hippasus, came along and said, actually, I think there are irrational numbers, and had a legit proof that irrational numbers exist, which we now know exist, but the Pythagoreans thought they didn't exist, and it's rumored they drowned Hippasus at sea. So, science isn't always pretty, but this social process, we have to be able to kind of give it its space and try to mediate this competition a little bit and be able to have people, allow people to share their stuff without being drowned at sea or mobbed on Twitter or, things like that. And so the public will play an essential role in this platform in allowing them to, see science. This is, they can see what we're talking about and debating. they'll read our editorials, the pop science articles, and there'll be ways for people, to become users. But right now we're going to be focusing on content creation from verified people, academics or people who've taken a deliberate step in their education towards being experts in the knowledge economy. And that we think that by bringing those people together in one place, this can be a hub of accredited information and debate.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the minor divergent down math history. I learned something new today. But it sounds really exciting, and there are a lot of aspects of it that I'm sure we'll get to dive into. We'd like to do at least 2 or 3 more of these interviews as you guys move along the process. So it'll be great to dive into more of the details. But just to keep this first one within our time bounds, let's wrap up with some questions about the future. Do you plan to try and raise investments? You mentioned before that you were thinking about it at different points, or you bootstrapping at one time, and now you're going to have this MVP. What do you think about raising investments for Agora?
Yeah, so we're already we've already had some commits for the friends and family stage of investment, and that's going to be crucial for bridging the gap between the MVP and the seed stage. We're already talking with some strategic venture capital companies in order to figure out who's right for us. We think we have a lot to offer, and we're starting these discussions. Again, we're going strong in the friends and family stage. And I think that this, again, it wouldn't have been possible without Paralect. We would have, been trying to we wouldn't have even had the designs to share with friends and family to show look, this is a thing. This is a real thing of a beautiful feed for scientists, and it was because of Paralect that we were able to have that. So while it's being developed, we were able to fundraise, and then, fundraising, working with the developers is helping us think about exactly how we'll structure our team to, show up strong for the seed stage. So we're already fundraising and having luck.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. And even though you're just sort of through the first month, is there a specific part of building or launching Agora that you're most excited about? Obviously, the designs excited you quite a bit. And we always hear that from founders. As soon as they get to see their idea, even in the simplest mock-ups, they start to really feel like it's real.
I think the thing I'm most excited about is engagement with the scientific community. Once we get scientists on our platform, we're going to be transparent about everything from data privacy to feed algorithms. So we'll be able to show, scientists love this stuff, how are we sharing papers and jobs? How are we helping your paper and job find its audience? Without divulging proprietary information, we were going to bring people along on the journey and show them what's really unique about our methods of making this medium fit scientists and level the playing field in science as well. Make it so that if you have 20 followers on Twitter, you can still have a very competitive paper on Agora. So that's really what I'm excited about, is the scientific community engagement. These are people I grew up with my whole life. My mom was a scientist, and throughout my PhD and postdoc and beyond, all of these friends were scientists, and I just really want to personally bring them on board and make a platform that helps them, so they look at it and they're like, this is amazing. And I want, when we talk to them, they get really excited. They're like, oh, what about this? Can we have this? Can we have that? I'm like, yes, we want all of that. We want, and we're doing our job to try to put it all together, but when we hear from them and their enthusiasm that someone is making this platform with them in mind, that's really that's what gets me going. I love it.
All right, well, that's great to hear, and I'm excited to follow the progress and talk to you again as you guys move through the accelerator. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. And is there anything that you'd like to share with our audience or your audience that we haven't covered today about the backstory of Agora or your experience so far?
Oh my gosh, there's maybe for another call. There's so much more to talk about and do, and we've got our work cut out for us. So, once we have a platform to show people, we'll be able to tell them all about how it came to life and, the many motivations at play. But for now, I think, we've got some work to do, and it's so great to talk with you and really grateful to be on this.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you too. You take care.
Bye.